Hi Teffo. Alright, so now we're going to move on to learning about the skill that we need in order to do trinomial factorization. Right. So what we have on screen right now is a bunch of trinomials. Okay. And the little structure that you can see, which I'm sure you're already familiar with, is the fact that we have three terms, right? So that's what the word tri means, right? So three terms. Okay. And then we have this pattern where we have a variable which is squared, and then there's a variable which is to the exponent of 1, and then that variable disappears, right? It doesn't really disappear, it is still here. It's so what it is, it's x to the exponent of 0, right? And we already spoke about anything to the exponent of 0 is 1, right? So how do we go about this process of trinomial factorization? Well, when we say that we have to factorize, right, so the instruction here would be something like factorize fully or completely, right? So what we're saying is that at the end of the day, what we want is to take this expanded trinomial, right, and write it as a product of two terms, right? So we have to write it as something times something. Okay, so what's going to go into this first bracket and what's going to go into this second bracket, that's what we need to figure out when we are going through this process of factorizing, right? But it is quite simple, right? So for these first ones, right, we are considering the examples where a is equals to 0, right? So remember that the general form of a trinomial is ax squared plus bx plus c, right? So we're talking about this coefficient here on x squared being equals to 1, right? So that's the examples that we're going to start off with. Okay. Obviously, this coefficient on x squared can't be less than 1, like it can't be 0, because then we don't have a trinomial, right? Okay, so let's go for this first one. Right, so the method is, well, there's lots of methods, right? So I'm going to teach you the method that I use, right? I find that factorizing trinomials by inspection is more easier for me than any other method that I've come across, right? So this is what I do, right? So for these ones where your a is equals to 1, it's easy because the factors of 1, right? So I do like this tree diagram type of thing, right? The factors of 1 is just 1 and 1, right? So 1 times 1. Okay, there's no other factor of 1, right? I actually did that wrong. Let's do this. Right, so this is a factor of 1. Right. Now, what about the factors of 4? Well, the first factors is, the way that you get this is you just divide it by the natural numbers, right? So we'll divide it by 1. If you divide 4 by 1, you get 4. So you have 1 times 4, right? That's the first group. Divided by 2, you'll get 2 times 2, right? You can't divide 4 by 3, obviously. And if you divide it by 4, you'll get 1, which takes you back to this product over here. So which means that you've found all of the factors, right? The minute you get a result where you're now working backwards, like 4 times 1, right? So that's where you stop, because now you've found all of the factors. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to consider this first group over here, right? So this 1 times 1, right? This 1 times 1 tells us that the coefficients of x, right, because this x squared is now going to go into these two brackets as just x and x, right? Now the coefficients of these x squareds is going to be this 1 and 1, right? So 1 and 1. Okay, I'm not going to write it in, right? So now what we're going to do is we're going to think about taking this first x, right, and multiplying it with each of these factors, right? So we're going to multiply it with 1, with 4, with 2, and with 2, right? But we're going to first work with each group separately, right? So if we take x and we multiply it with 1, we'll get 1x. And if we take this x and we multiply it with 4, we'll get 4x, right? So 1x plus 4x does that give us 4x over here? No, 1x plus 4x is 5x. Okay, so which means that we can't use this product over here. So which means we're only left with this product. Okay, so we're going to have x times 2, which is 2x. Then we're going to have x times 2, which is also 2x, right? And 2x plus 2x is 4x, and 2 times 2 we know is 4, right? So which means that in order to get that first 2x, right, so we're going to go x times something, right? That something is going to be this 2, and we need a positive 2, right? And then we need this part over here, which is going to give us the second part that has the x, which is going to be this 2, right? And we need a positive 2, right? So positive 2 times this x, right, gives us the second 2x, right? So we have 2x and 2x gives us 4x, our middle term, and then lastly 2 times 2 is equals to 4, right? And this is then, okay, equals to, because you have the same product over here, right, you can just write this as x plus 2 all squared. Okay, and this takes us back to what we were discussing about x plus y, right, to some exponent m not being equal to x to the m plus y to the m, right? This is that situation over here. You can see that a binomial, right, x plus 2 all squared is not equals to this. It's equals to a trinomial, right? So there's this middle term over here. Okay, so a little shortcut sometimes if it happens that your result is going to be a binomial squared, right? You see that if your first term and your last term are perfect squares, right? So x squared is a perfect square, and 4 is also a perfect square because 4 is 2 squared, right? So you can just take the square root of the first and the last term, put it inside of a bracket, and then square that whole thing. Okay, that's a little shortcut, right? But I didn't want to really show the shortcut over here. I wanted to take you through the process of trinomial factorization. Right. Let's go for example number 2. Right, so in example number 2, again, we have this coefficient of 1 over here in front of the x squared. The factors of 1 is just 1 times 1, right? What are the factors of 8? Well, the factors of 8, the first one is 1 times 8, right? The second one, divide this by 2, it's going to be 2 times 4, right? If you divide 8 by 3, you can't. If you divide 8 by 4, you'll get 2, which means you're working backwards now. You're getting 4 times 2. Okay, so that's where we stop, right? So now we've completely exhausted all of our factors, or we found all of the factors. Okay, so we're then going to go and open 2 brackets, right? So I'm missing an equal sign over here, so this is going to be equals, right? We're going to open for ourselves 2 brackets, right? And then we know that this x is going to go in here and in here, right? So if we consider this first factor, we'll have x, right, plus 8x, right, which is 9x, and we are looking for a 6x. So even if we think about 8x minus 1x, right, that is 7x, and we're looking for a 6x, so which means we can't use this one, right? Let's think about the second one. 2x plus 4x is 6x, right? So we can use that exactly the way that we just said it, right? We need a 2x, so this x times whatever must be here must be 2x, so it's going to be a positive 2, and then we need a this times that must be a positive 4, so we need to put a positive 4 over there, right? So we have 2x plus 4x, that's 6x, and then 4 times 2 is 8. Okay, so that's it, right? So for the third example, right, again, we have 1 as the coefficient of x squared, right? The factors of 1 is 1 times 1, right? What about the factors of 60? Well, there's going to be a lot of them. Let's start off by dividing by 1. Right, if we divide by 1, we'll have 1 times 60. right? If we divide this by 2, we'll have 2 times 30. Okay, so if we divide 60, right, by 3, right, that will give us 20, right? If we divide it by 4, that will give us 15. And if we divide it by 5, that will give us 12, right? And lastly, if we divide it by 6, that will give us 10, right? Right? And we can't divide it by 7. Can we divide it by 8? Let's see. No, we can't divide it by 8. We can't divide it by 9. But we can divide it by 10, right? So which means that the last factor is 10 times 6. Okay? So those are all the factors of 60, right? And notice that I was just considering the number 60. Sorry, I didn't say that in the beginning, right? You are just considering the number, right? You're ignoring the sign, okay? Right. So now we have to then go into our two brackets, okay? And we know that we're going to have x and x in these two brackets, right? Now we have to look at all of these factors, okay? And if there's a lot of them like they are right now, okay, what you can just do is just quickly scan them and see which one can just give you a 7 very quickly, right? Obviously 1 and 60 is too far, like they're too big of a difference for you to add or subtract to get to 7. 2 and 30 is also not going to work. 3 and 20 is also not going to work. 4 and 15 might work. 5 and 12 maybe. 10 and 6 won't work because I know that difference there is 4, and also this won't work. Right, so let's look at these two. Right. If you take 15 and you subtract 4 from it, you basically have 10 minus 4, which is 6, and 6 plus 5 is 11. So that's not going to work, right? So we just left with this last one over here. You have a 10 over here, so this is 10 plus 2 basically. So 10 minus 5 is 5, and 5 plus 2 is 7. Okay, so what we need to have is we need to have 5, and we need to subtract 12, right, in order to get to a minus 7x. Okay, so we're going to have x plus a 5, right, so we're going to have plus 5x, right, and then we need a minus 12x, right, so minus 12x, and that's going to give us a minus 7x. Okay, and then we already know that 5 times 12 is 60. Okay, that is now this trinomial completely factorized. Okay, so let's look at this little challenge over here. Right, so for this little challenge, it's a challenge because we have this x cubed as our leading term, right? Even though we've got 3 terms, which is the structure of a trinomial, right? But basically what we have here, okay, I'm just going to rewrite it. So x cubed plus 2x squared minus 8x, right? What we really have here is a common factor of x, right? So that's something that we didn't have in these trinomials over here, right? There was no common factor that we could take out from all 3 terms, right? But over here, we can pull out a common factor of x, right? And that's going to leave us with an x squared, okay, plus 2x minus 8 inside of the bracket, right? Now, inside of this bracket is the trinomial that we need to factorize again, right? That's why they give the instruction factorize fully, right? So that's the first factor, right? The first factor is x. Now we need to get the other factors from this trinomial, right? Or this is also called a quadratic. Okay, trinomial, quadratic, same thing. Okay, so we are now going to be basically factorizing this. So we need to open 2 brackets. Okay, we know we're going to have an x and an x by now, right? The leading term there is 1. So for 8, we're going to go, okay, 8 divided by 1 is 8. So we're going to have 1 times 8. We're also going to have 2 times 4. We can't divide 8 by 3. We can't divide 8 by... We can divide 8 by 4, but then we get 2, which is basically just that. Okay, so in the previous example, we wanted to add to plus 6, right? But now we want to add to a positive 2x. Okay, so we still can't use the first factor, right? But we can use the second factor, because you can have 4 minus 2, right? That is still a plus 2, right? So remember I said 4, right? So in other words 4x, right? So we need to have this x times 4. Okay, so that's going to give us our 4x, and then we need a minus 2x. So we need to put a minus 2 over here, because that times this will give us a minus 2x, right? So 4x minus 2x is this positive 2x over here. And then positive times negative is negative. 2 times 4 is 8. Okay, so you can see how the signs change based on the middle term. Okay, so this is just essentially x times x minus 2 times x plus 4. Okay, so also something else with trinomial factorization is that you need to check, okay, that the signs of the last term also work out, right? So you have positive times positive, that gives you a positive for this first one, okay? And you have positive times positive over here, which gives you that positive, right? You have negative times positive, which gives you that negative. Over here, you have negative times positive, which gives you this negative over here. Okay, so now here are a few trinomials, well, 2 trinomials for you to try out for yourself, right? I'll give you a few minutes just for you to work this out. Okay, so hopefully you were able to go through the process of finding the factors of 24, right? And that is 1 times 24, right? 2 times 12, 3 times 8, 4 times 6, and 6 times 4. Okay, so that's the end. I'll just rewrite them over here as well. Okay, so let's look at the first one, right? Remember that when you have a lot of factors like this, just quickly scan through them and see which ones just by inspection will get you to 10, right? 1 and 24 obviously won't get you to 10, right? 2 and 12 can get you to 10. 3 and 8 won't get you to 10, and 4 and 6 can get you to 10, right? So what we're going to need is obviously our 2 brackets, right? And we'll have our x in the one bracket and the x in the other bracket, okay? If we look at 2 times 12, right, in order to have a negative 10x, we can have a negative 12, right? So negative 12 over here, right? So negative 12x plus a 2x, right, which will come from there, right? So plus 2x. and that will give you a negative 10x. Okay, or what we can have, right, is x and x in the other bracket, right, and then using the 4 and the 6 we can have minus 6 and minus 4, right, so we're going to have negative 6x and negative 4x, right, that will give us a negative 10x, right. But what about this last term, right? Okay, so if we look at the signs, positive times negative is a negative, and we are looking for a positive, okay, so which means that we can't use this one, right. We can use this one because negative times negative is a positive, okay, so which means that our final answer is going to be x minus 4 times x minus 6. Okay, now for the second one, right, again we scanning for 10, right, so we obviously can't use that and we can't use that like previously. Okay, we have x and x, right. For 2 times 12, right, you can have 12 and minus 2, that will give you a 10, right, so you're going to need a plus 12 and a minus 2, right, that will still give you 10x, right. Right, and then for the other possibility, right, we'll have again x and x in our bracket, right. How do we make 10 from 4 and 6? Well, 4 plus 6 is 10, right, so we just need a plus 6 and a plus 4, okay. So then after that, we just need to check this final sign over here, right, and that comes from these two signs, right, so negative times positive is a negative, but positive times positive is not a negative, right, so we have to reject this one, right, we have to reject this one, okay, because even though the middle term is a 10x, the final term does not have the correct sign, okay, so right, so then our final answer is just going to be x minus 2 and x plus 12. Right, so that's it for factorizing trinomials with a equals to 1, right? In the next video, we're going to look at factorizing trinomials where the a is not equals to 1, right? In other words, it's greater than 1, right? And then we're going to then move on to other types of trinomials, right, that are created by that question that you had where your exponents are fractions. Okay.